Labor Senator Kimberley Kitching was laid to rest today in Melbourne. The funeral at St Patrick's Cathedral was attended by Labor leader Anthony Albanese and a range of senior politicians from across the political divide. Her husband gave a long and eloquent eulogy, but said he would not pretend to give advice about being nice in politics or blame his wife's death on anyone or any campaign of unpleasantness.
Her friends and ferociously loyal staff are angry about how she was treated. Of course they are. And I have no quarrel with them about that. They know what they saw with their own eyes. But if I'm angry with anyone, I'm angry with myself. I'm angry I wasn't driving her around that busy day, as I often did. I'm angry I didn't meddle enough in her health. The simple truth of it is that Kimberley's political and moral judgment was vastly superior to the small number who opposed her internally. And of course, there's a lot I could say about the unpleasantness of a cantankerous cabal, not all of them in Parliament, that was aimed at Kimber. And the intensity of it did baffle and hurt her. But I hope it's sufficient to say she deserves so very much better.
She did indeed. Also at the funeral were the so-called Mean Girls, Labor Senators Penny Wong, Kristina Keneally and Katy Gallagher. It was Kitching who came up with that name for this trio, a name borrowed, of course, from a teen movie. But there was nothing teenage about the antics involved here. Kitching, who died of a heart attack 10 days ago, was distressed about the way she'd been frozen out of Senate tactics meetings, ostracised and allegedly bullied. Kitching's stress culminated in the realisation just a day before her death that her Senate pre-selection was in jeopardy and she was worried her beloved political career was about to be cut short. After admitting she made a cruel reference 3 years ago to Kitching being childless, Senator Wong gave her first interview on the issue yesterday.
Did you say to her, well, if you had children, you might understand why there is a climate emergency?
Well, they're not precisely the words I said, but
and this is
no. Let me please. My motivation in that exchange wasn't to personally attack her. My motivation was to express the distress that many children feel about climate change. But what I said was insensitive. Now, I regret it. And I apologised as I should when I became aware that how she felt about
it. After it became public?
Because
you had said it?
Because she never raised it with me. It became public after she spoke to the ABC, but it wasn't ever raised with me.
It might not have occurred to you before then that she could be upset.
Oh, yeah, that's a fair question. That's a fair question.
It was a fair question indeed from Nine's Chris Yeoman. Wong denies any of what she did amounted to bullying, and she's tried to shut down the debate about bullying in Labor ranks.
I'd invite some of those sharing their views and some of those making claims to reflect on whether or not they are expressing the common decency.
It does appear to an outsider that when it's the Labor Party, there is always an excuse for this kind of behaviour, but it's never accepted if it's on the Conservative side.
Look,
no matter what the circumstances are, no matter if there's a trial coming up.
What I was going to finish saying is there is a common decency that I think we would all hope, that Australians would hope, your viewers would hope, that is demonstrated when someone has died.
Really? The death of Senator Kitching used as a shield to protect Labor from discussing the alleged bullying of that same Labor senator. That's a pretty low evasion in my view, especially when it's Kitching's grieving friends and family who want these issues raised. And while Labor and Wong run from scrutiny, Yeoman grilled her on double standards.
And can I mention also that when Linda Reynolds was trying to defend herself against allegations, and that they were against allegations about the way that she had spoken about Brittany Higgins. No quarter was given by Labor to her.
Are you really suggesting that these two situations,
These are both very similar. But one of them
Chris,
involves
please,
a woman who's now...
Chris, I'm going to put... I don't think your viewers would think it's reasonable to say these situations are comparable. I mean, the situation involving Ms Brittany Higgins, and this is out of Ms Higgins' own mouth.
An allegation of rape.
An allegation of... No.
And on the other one, we have an allegation that a woman was under enormous stress when she died because she was being bullied.
May I
Both
finish?
are very serious.
Yeah, the same standards applied to both sides. That's not too much to ask, is it? Anthony Albanese initially tried to portray the alleged bullies as the victims in this controversy. Victims because they'd been called mean girls. Then he went missing on this issue late last week and didn't front the media yesterday either after Wong's interview. But on Saturday he rejected an inquiry into the affair.
We have a process established which is there. The statements that have been made have been answered by the people who've been directed to. When people have raised issues with me, I've directed it. I've seen, for example, the issue of, and I do think this is, I've got to say, I think this is an unfortunate discussion to have 2 days before a funeral of someone, but the media continue to ask these questions, and that is unfortunate.
Labor's hypocrisy is astounding here. For more than a year, they've sought to weaponise any allegation relating to harassment, abuse, bullying, or in the case of former Liberal staffer Brittany Higgins, even an alleged rape, as political attacks against the coalition and the Prime Minister. Along with much of the media, they've amplified claims of victimisation by disaffected former Liberal MP Julia Banks and the disaffected former Liberal staffer Rachelle Miller, who had a consensual affair with former Education Minister Alan Tudge. All the while, Labor has scandalised this as the coalition having a so-called women problem and fostering an unsafe workplace in Parliament House. Yet Labor figures such as Penny Wong stood by when Liberal MP Nicole Flint suffered foul and sexist abuse and intimidation from Green Left campaigners and others. Yet now, when there are clear and specific allegations about the mistreatment of a recently deceased female Labor senator, the very people who've been weaponising these issues tell us there's nothing to see here. And there are so many activists and commentators whose double standards are exposed here too. Take the ABC's Virginia Trioli. She wrote a piece playing down the issue, saying, let's not fall into the trap of pretending Kitching was some vulnerable ingenue. She was a tough political player herself who knew the game and came to politics with a complicated history. And sure enough, Green Left independent Zali Steggall applauded on Twitter, saying Trioli called out ridiculous sexist BS and political opportunism and sensationalism in the face of a personal tragedy. Steggall said she'd seen MPs on both sides bullied and upset by party room power plays. That's party politics, she said. Which is kind of strange, because 3 years ago, Steggall was highlighting Anti-Bullying Day and saying we have to take a stand and call out the bullies and support the victims. And also 3 years ago, Channel 10's Lisa Wilkinson was very agitated about bullying claims made by a former Liberal.
What on earth is going on in the Liberal Party?
Well, that's a question I think you need to ask Scott Morrison.
Don't you think people would really applaud you if you called out those bullies? Bullies only operate effectively if they're allowed to live in the shadows.
Yet now, in the wake of Kitching's death and the bullying claims, Wilkinson has gone all nuanced. She retweeted a piece by The Guardian talking down the issue again, saying brutality behind the scenes on all sides of politics is never pretty. And she talked about nuance and complexity after Kitching's death. And what about Green Left columnist, former Channel 10 reporter Paul Bongiorno? He tweeted in praise of Keneally's piece, calling it thoughtful analysis that was an antidote to overtly partisan rubbish. But surprise, surprise, in 2018, when there were those bullying claims from Liberals in the wake of Malcolm Turnbull's political demise, Bongiorno was all outraged, saying it made his skin crawl when a party bullies its women MPs and senators. Well, it makes his skin crawl when those claims are made about one party, at least. And what about feminist commentator and political candidate Jane Caro? She also endorsed the lines from The Guardian and Keneally that seemed to take more offence at Kitching's use of the term mean girls than the behaviour that triggered it. Yep, so let's go back and see what Keneally was saying when the bullying claims centred on the Liberals.
You've got extensive experience of corporate Australia, and you describe Parliament House as the most unsafe workplace.
In the workplace in Parliament House, when I entered it, it was like going back in time.
Well, I do wonder, I think it's a question that I ask of you, but I ask of myself and all of us as well. It's our responsibility to speak out too.
Yes, it is. Yes, Virginia, there is bullying in politics, and you should call it out on all sides.